right, it seems to be evening out. Oh, here we go, one more. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. So my name is Audrey Savage, and I'm an International Communications Officer here at Lund University in our International Marketing and Recruitment Office. So our office is here to help you with everything in terms of your application. But today we're going to not take too much time to talk about applications. Instead, we're here to actually learn about what it's like to study in the humanities and languages subject area from the perspective of our current students and from some recent alumni. So we have a great panel for you here today, who I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a moment. But first, I'd just like to give some logistical notes that if you have any questions to ask the panel, of course, that's the reason we're here today, is to take your questions. So you can post those in the Q&A, which is at the bottom of the screen. There's also a little thumbs up button. So if you notice that someone has posted the same question that you also have, you can give that a little thumbs up and it will knock it up to the top of the list to make sure that we answer it. So otherwise, we're going to, I think, jump right in. And I'd like to go around, and if everyone could just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you're studying here at Lund University. And perhaps maybe why you chose Lund. Maybe that's a good kind of intro here as well. So Mia, why don't we start with you?
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm from Croatia and I study visual culture. And for why I chose Lund, well, for me, it was either Lund or Rome, but I went with the one that was higher on the world ranking list. So it's a bit shallow, but that's my answer.
Never a bad reason to come. Definitely. Lee, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee. I am from the United States, and I am a recent graduate in applied cultural analysis. I finished in June. And I came to Lund for a handful of reasons, but I think one very specific reason was that I was making the decision in the first month of the pandemic, and the university was by far the most communicative of the universities I was considering about what was going on and all of that, which seemed like a good sign.
Absolutely. Always something we try to maintain, some good communication with our students, for sure. Andreas.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andreas. I study language and linguistics, specializing in Chinese, classical Chinese. Second-year student. I am from Gothenburg, Sweden. And I chose Lund University because for my master's, I wanted to stay in my home country, and Lund is the best university in Sweden. So it was a very easy choice for me.
Great. And I learn new things every time we do one of these panels. I had no idea there was such a thing as classical Chinese. So very cool. Nell.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Nell. I'm an archaeology student and I'm Swedish too. I'm from Scania, so not far away from where Lund actually is. And that was kind of an obvious sign for me why I chose Lund University, not just because it's the best university in Sweden, but it's close to home. And the reason why I chose archaeology is because, I mean, it's the most fun subject there is, basically. Yeah.
Cool. And Miriam, last but not least.
Yeah, hello, I'm Miriam Divani from Georgia, and I'm a master's student of human rights studies in Lund. I chose this program because I wanted to study human rights from historical, political, and legal perspectives, not just legislation. So that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you. And one thing I also forgot to mention in the beginning is I myself am also a graduate of Lund University. I studied applied cultural analysis as well, the same program that Lee studied. So it's especially fun for me to be here and talk with some fellow humanities studies students here. So first, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your favorite thing about the program. If you had to just name one main point that is really the selling point you think for your program, both for yourself but for others, what would you say is the best? Maybe we'll go the opposite way around this time. So we'll start with Miriam.
I chose human rights studies, as I mentioned, because it's not just concentrated on law and gives you opportunity to study human rights from a different perspectives. For example, for me, it was interesting to study human rights from historical perspectives because I have working experience as a human rights defender, and I know that just knowing legislation is not enough, and you need to know more about your subject, and that's what I love most.
Great, thank you. Nell?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a tough question. No, everything about my program so far has kind of exceeded my expectations. They have given us really good opportunities to get practical experiences, as well as get into like a small into the research world, actually. And it's just, you learn so much more than you actually expected to learn. So it's amazing.
Wonderful, that's great to hear. Andreas?
I'd say that the best part about the language and linguistics place, whatever you call it, I promise I do study languages, but not English, is that we do rigorous academic research. I feel like there's not much there's not much bullshit, pardon my French. We learn how to become researchers. We study serious topics, and we try to do it in a serious way. We're not like concerned about necessarily like stepping on people's toes, or like, I don't feel like we're ever inhibited by anything else. We're here to become good researchers, and that's what we aim to become.
Wow, that's fantastic. Lee?
Yeah, I think that for applied cultural analysis, probably the biggest selling point to me is freedom and flexibility. It's a program where you could study almost anything, and it's providing you a very specific kind of vector through which to study those things, but you could use it with almost any research idea in the humanities in mind. You could continue to work with that, and then you could prepare for a job in industry or in academia just as easily. The program prepares you for both. So you can do almost anything with it.
Absolutely, I would definitely agree there for sure. And Mia, what about the best thing for visual culture?
Well, I would have to agree with Andreas, but for me, it's how well structured it is and how engaging it is for students, especially when in the discussions, the professor looked to you as an equal, not even though like they know much more than you do, but like the discussions are pretty equal.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the next thing we should dive into, is that relationship with professors. I know perhaps for Andreas and Nell, it maybe didn't surprise you too much coming from Sweden, but I think coming from other countries, sometimes it can be a bit of a shock how informal the relationships are with professors. But is there anyone who would like to talk a little bit more about that? What is it really like in your department in between the professors and the students in the classroom?
Yes.
Miriam.
I want to say that firstly, it was like really huge surprise for me, because the academic staff is like so friendly, and you can book interviews and get academic career advices too, not just connected to the subject. And it was really hard for me at the first to call the first names, because in my country we call them professor and then the last name. And yeah, it was like huge surprise and not easy to adapt.
Absolutely. Anything anyone would want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. It was an adjustment for me coming from the States, the lack of hierarchy, the first names, but also just, and of course, I mean this in a good way, the kind of the degree to which professors really become kind of your friends. I mean, I've been to professors' houses for dinner. Like that's at least in my experience, that was part of what it meant to be here, which also meant that for me, it didn't feel stuffy in the way that academia can sometimes feel stuffy.
Absolutely. And what about the relationship with the other students in your program? So could you maybe all share how large your program is in general, and then perhaps what's the breakdown of international versus Swedish students in your programs? Maybe we'll start back again with Mia for visual culture.
Well, for visual culture, there's around 30 of us in class, the ones who come, of course. There should be more. There are a couple of that didn't show up at all for the program, but it's mostly international. There's people from all over the world. I think there are maybe five people from who are from Sweden. Everybody else is from around. Usually it's the European students, but we have a person from Mexico. We have some Chinese students. So yeah, it's very well rounded.
Yeah, great. A good mix there.
And it's also a mix in age as well. So I think I'm one of the youngest older students.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are some, we have people who just came from the undergraduate courses, but for some of us, this is our second or even third master. So.
Okay, great. Maybe actually it's easier to just say, does anyone's program differ from that in kind of smaller size, 20, 30 students and quite international? Is that fair to say for most?
It's the same for us.
Same.
Great.
Same.
What is it like to learn in such an international environment? Maybe actually I'll direct this to Nell and Andreas. As Swedish students, what's it like to be in a classroom with so many people from around the world?
I think it's quite amazing actually, because it's part of the charm. You get to know many new cultures in a way you weren't able to experience before, since staying in your home country. And we're also quite international. I think now is the first time ever we have an actual master student from China, and that hasn't happened before. So that's really cool. We're kind of expanding in a way. So you really get to experience not just new people, new cultures, but you learn things about yourself as well. So I think that's very charming and really nice.
Wonderful. Andreas, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think that I think Lund in general, as Lee said, focuses a lot on, offers a lot of academic freedom. And I think that having a lot of international students really stirs up the pot, like thinking wise or whatever you want to call it, right? Like you offer a lot of ideas that you might not get from Swedish students. And so I think that more than anything, it just helps you to see the world from a different perspective. And that helps you to really pin down what you want to do with your academic studies on your own, pretty much.
And maybe one thing I'll also add to ask here, perhaps I'll direct this to you, Lee, is what is it like being in a program that also has not only students from different backgrounds, but students from different academic backgrounds? Because I think for some of our programs here, archaeology and languages, you need to, of course, have studied that to an extent previously, but applied cultural analysis, for example, is quite open in terms of the academic backgrounds you can apply with. So how does that translate in the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely means that I think it adds a richness to the discussions. It also means that there's a little bit of a feeling of everybody is sort of like an ambassador from their own world. And I think in some ways what that means is that it reduces any feeling of competition. It becomes very hard, again, speaking only for myself, but I did not really feel that there was very much, if any, competitiveness within the program, in part, I think, because of Swedish academic culture, but also just because it was almost impossible to compare ourselves to one another in some ways. And I do think that means that you have to, you will become very aware of what you know and what you don't know, which can sometimes be a bit of a mind trip a little bit, but in a good way, in a productive way.
Yeah, great to hear. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the actual classes and the academic environment. So what's the typical structure like for the courses that you're taking? Are you in mostly large lectures or seminars, going out into the field? What's that look like? Perhaps we'll go around to everyone now and start with Miriam.
Yeah, so the environment is really dynamic and we have a lot of assignments and presentations to do every week. But the most important thing is that environment is not stressful and you have time to prepare your presentation and you're not feeling like the deadline is tomorrow and I have to do a lot of things. So you can take your time and work on the presentation assignment or whatever you have to do. Also, last month we had the study trips. We went in Copenhagen and we also visited United Nations Women's Headquarters, also with Human Rights House. So it's really interesting, and I think so far I took really good decision to join my faculty.
Wow, that sounds really wonderful. Great, thank you. Nell, how about for archaeology? Do you get to spend a lot of time in the field?
Unfortunately not, no. But we do have the beginning of the master's program is always the field research, practical fields course. And it's actually great to start off with that because you really get to know the people, your new classmate that you'll be spending all the time with for the next coming 2 years. So that's awesome. We'll really get close knitted out there in the pit. But really, it's a good mix, I think, later on with seminars and lectures, and you really get sure, the occasional group assignment as well, but it's quite individual work, and it's very, like, no one's going to force you to do anything. It's you're there because you want to be there, and you do your work, and it's very up to you if you really want to succeed, I guess. So I like it. It's very up to my speed, at least. Yeah.
Great. Andreas?
So our structure, we have basically 3 different types of classes. We have classes for the entire all-year students, which makes about 25-30 students, I think, where we do things like philosophy of science and methodology classes. Then we have classes specifically for our language, of course, which are usually very small. In our Chinese classes, we're 3 people, which makes the focus very, like, you get a very close connection to your professor, which is very good, of course. And then we also have certain classes that are optional. I think we do 7.5 credits each semester that are optional, where basically pick and choose, and usually these classes end up being around 10 people each. But as for the structure itself, is usually very similar. We read a lot in all classes, and we usually have one written assignment on around 5,000 words each at the end of each semester, and then some form of group presentation as well. A lot of dialogue in class. We talk a lot about basically we read the articles and then we talk about them, and then at the end we write about them, and that's it.
Yeah. Great. Lee, how about for MacA?
Yeah, so as the name of the program suggests, the MacA program is very applied, which in this case means that you're doing a lot of explicit actual projects with clients in the greater Scania community. So most of your courses are oriented around some kind of project that you're doing. Either in the beginning, maybe it's a little more for like a hypothetical client, but by the second semester, these are for very real clients, real people out there in the world. And in the first year, you're doing all of these projects in a collaborative way with other students. You're working in small groups, so you're really learning not just theory, not just methods, you're also basically learning project management, and you're learning how you function in a group that are all people who are, you have a shared kind of intellectual language that you're learning, but you're also learning, who's good at what, who's the person who naturally has the best email etiquette, who is better at the hardcore analysis, stuff like that. And then the second year, it's a 2-year program. The second year, you're doing similar work. You're doing a work placement project, another applied project, but you're doing it on your own, and then you're writing a thesis. So it's very much sort of a 1 year where you're rubbing elbows the whole time with your students, and then the other year where you're largely on your own. And the program does not structure all that much of your time week to week. Depends a little bit on the class, but for the most part, you're not in class that many hours per week. So it's a lot of individual work, as other people have mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And does that hold true as well, Mia, for visual culture?
And visual culture is, as I said, very well structured. We have loads of reading, but it's a good mix of lectures and then seminars. I'm only in my first semester now, but in our first, I would say that this course that we had first, the theory and methodology one, is by far the best one I had ever. And I had 3 of them previously to put it in. So basically what they want to teach us is how to write different genres. So in the first course, we had a typical essay. Here we have smaller assignments and a field work that we did. And then in the next course, I believe we'll have to organize a conference. So I would say it's a great program if you want to know both theory and how to use it in the real world. I think we'll have some project management later on as well. So
that sounds really cool, especially with the conference.
But we don't have much practical work, but it is something that our program can adhere to, because there's also loads of people who come from different practical backgrounds. So it's a good mix.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. I want to give a quick reminder to our audience that if you have any questions for the panelists, you can always, of course, post them in the Q&A, but there's a couple little small things I want to dig into deeper for some of the programs here. So actually, Andreas, I'm going to come back to you because I think it's really interesting in the Languages and Linguistics programs, like you mentioned, that you take some courses all together, all of the specializations. So then you're in a class with people who study different languages. I'd love to hear more about how that is, because I imagine a lot of students don't go into it thinking that will be the case. You think you'll only study with your language students.
Yeah, I think that again, we aim to become researchers, academics. Doesn't necessarily mean we all aim to become professors and do PhDs, but we all want to learn critical thinking skills. And simply memorizing one more Chinese character isn't going to make me a better researcher. So I think that there needs to be some form of mishmash. And I mean, languages and linguistics is it's extremely broad, right? Language is very social science-esque, right? Linguistics can be extremely natural science-esque, whatever you want to call it, right? Especially the phoneticians that I study with. I mean, they basically do natural science more than they do languages, right? And so it's languages and linguistics is for people who want to become critical thinking people, and you need to mix with people. I think that those of us from the language part of it, we offer a lot of learning about how to actually think critically, whereas the linguists, they teach us how to have really rigorous methodology, and that creates a really good mix. And then at the end, we do study a lot of language as well. But again, the main goal, I think the idea is that you're supposed to pretty much know your language by the time you apply. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to be like fluent in the language. I wasn't fluent in Chinese when I started. I mean, I'm still not perfectly fluent in Chinese now either. But like, we're not here to learn what the animals at the zoo is called, right? We're here to actually like try to find new. We're here to study the language in one way or another, whether that be a language itself or phonetics or general linguistics. And for that, you need to mix with other people that have generally the same interest. Just as we need different people from different countries. It's the same principle, right? That's pretty much it.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much. And now I want to ask to dive in a little bit as well for the beginning of the program that you talked about when you do the field visit. Is that to Upoka?
Yes, that's to Upoka.
Would you like to share a little bit more about what Upoka is for anyone who
sure, yeah.
familiar?
Upoka is probably the biggest settlement site that we know of today that was active for an extremely long period of time, around 1,500 years. And actually, like 1,500 years ago, was its like height of use, I should say, maybe, in all of Northern Europe that we know of. So it's a massive site, about the size of medieval Lund. You could Google that if you want to. It's really big, at least for that period of time. And it's a fascinating site. It was first discovered in the 30s in modern time, and already back then people knew, okay, this is something big. And from the 90s, we have been excavating there like every year, at least with us students, and we have barely even scratched the surface. There's so much stuff there, and it's a magical place, really. And now we'll start up a like real proper scientific archaeological project. So we'll hopefully find some good things to share with you soon. But yeah, it's an amazing place, and it's so cool to actually be there in that place together with these people I actually go to do research with later on. So it's a good start to the next coming 2 years, I promise.
Wow, yeah, that sounds very exciting coming up. Great. Maybe the last little small deep dive I want to go into is for applied culture analysis. But Lee, maybe you didn't experience this as much, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But of course, one question that we get a lot on our side is about the connection to the University of Copenhagen and the kind of collaboration there. But I think actually, am I mistaken that you weren't able to take advantage of that as much during Corona, during your year?
Yeah, not as much. We weren't able to physically go to Copenhagen for the lectures, although we did have in the first year of the program, you have sort of, your lectures are half and half. They're half with a professor in Lund, in the Lund department, and then half with a professor in the Copenhagen department, which also meant that in our case, this was all kind of over Zoom. The Lund students would join over Zoom with the Copenhagen students. In a non-MacA context, you get to do more sort of physical mingling with the Copenhagen MacA class. But yeah, it also means you're getting in contact with more professors. Because of the proximity of Lund to Copenhagen, there are also plenty of opportunities to do work placements there.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I can say, as someone who studied applied culture analysis a couple of years before Corona, what you would experience now if you applied and came, thankfully, now that we're back on campus, is, as Elise said, basically for the first year of the studies, every other week you go to Copenhagen for a full day of class, and the other weeks they come to Lund, which is, I think, quite a cool aspect of the program. But in general, as you mentioned as well, for anyone who isn't really aware of the geography of where Lund is located, we are about 40 minutes perhaps by train from Lund to Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark, which means that this whole sort of area here is really ripe for taking advantage of kind of those connections in terms of work placement and industry, and also research. We have so many different research parks and institutions in this area. So that's really a wonderful thing to take advantage of. But great. Well, moving on a little bit, I'd love to hear a bit more from everyone about if there are any opportunities for networking, or if I know some of you are in your first year, so you're maybe quite a bit off from thinking too much about a future career, but is it something that the program kind of talks to you a bit about what to expect with a future career, or prepares you in any way for that? Maybe we'll start now with Nell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't remember they've been talking about it like super obviously, but it becomes obvious as you go along with the courses and the program, is that every single day you're networking, because these people that you're studying with and the professors are actually your future colleagues in a way, because it's such a kind of small subject of study, you know, it's not economics or law. We're all a small little group. And so we tie our most important contacts already now, and that's what's going to really aid us in our future careers. So it's very, use that when you come here. I promise it's going to be the smartest thing you do.
Absolutely. Miriam, how about you? I know you're in your first year, but is it something that's been mulling around a bit in the program?
Yeah, it's my first semester, but we already had 2 career meetings, because we have to choose in the third semester, we have to choose our internship or field work, and they are giving us a lot of information, like what we can do. Like you can go for the internship, even you can go abroad, like if you find a suitable program for you, or you can stay and do field work. So we had these meetings, and they gave us a lot of brochures, like about the organizations and how to write our CVs, and how to plan like this kind of future career prospects.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Andreas, I know, as you've mentioned, it's kind of focusing going into research, but how much do they prepare you for that, do you think?
Yeah, I think that like once every semester, I think it is, we have like an alumni webinar where basically I'm then the listener, and there are other people talking to me, where they talk about, where they bring in people from all different areas, right? So you have some people who have done some languages, some people that have done linguistics, and they talk about like how they got their jobs, what jobs they have, and how they got their jobs, and it's very good, and you're able to like network a little bit there as well. Most of the people there have either like started working at big companies, or they started their own companies, of course, and you really feel that like in general, especially languages, it's a very, and that's my specialization. That's I can talk even more about languages. You feel that like you really have the opportunity to really make an impact, right? Because there are very few people who really want to do research on language and become experts within a special field of language. And so, you know, the world is ours for the taking. And you can focus like on specific areas within like translation of translation of business agreements, right? And then you can build your company off of that. I know there was a guy who was doing exactly that with German. And he now owns some big company with like 800 people or whatever it was. I forget. Don't quote me on that, I remember. But like, you know, you learn of all of these ideas through these alumni webinar, which is very good. Then we also do have lectures, I think also once per semester, once per year, on how to write a CV, curriculum vitae, resume. And I think also in general, I feel like my professors, they're all very open to discuss these things with me. I can just talk to any of my professors and just say like, how do I apply for a job? And they'll know very well because they're teaching me exactly what type of, well, I mean, they're my teachers, so they know exactly what I'm going to go through. And I feel like that general openness is also, shouldn't be underappreciated.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. Lee, how about you?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that makes MacA unique, again, because everybody is coming from different professional backgrounds, it's not really like there's some universal career pathway that you're really being prepared for in this case. But what the program does do is that it kind of explodes your CV, because you get all of these projects that you can point to that you've done with it, which will often be completely disparate kind of topics, but you're using you can basically the same methods, and you can point to all of these different experiences that you've had after you're done with the program. And there are opportunities for alumni networking, which I definitely found very helpful. I definitely think it's a program where, because there's so much freedom and because everybody's coming from a different place, you should go in being ready to be always reflecting about, what do I want out of this, as opposed to what does this do for people? Because it's going to come down to you. But if you're reflecting on that, then there's always going to be people, whether it's professors or alumni or other people, that you're going to be able to have conversations with to help figure out, okay, what is this telling me about my path? And there are definitely opportunities. These kinds of client projects can also, you can parlay them into actual work later sometimes. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. I think I like to say that MacA is a great program to come into if you don't know what you want to work with, because you explore all these different paths, of course, through the different projects. Or if you do know what you want to work with, you can kind of tailor everything specifically to that very easily as well. So you're kind of in a good situation no matter what, which is awesome. Great. And Mia, how about for visual culture? Do they prepare much for future careers?
Well, we are prepared for the theoretical career, but and the academic one, but we don't have an internship that is structured into our course. But we are encouraged to go out and explore what we would like to do in our future careers. We're encouraged to even exchange our optional studies with studies abroad. Even in Sweden or anywhere else in the world, they're very encouraging. They're encouraging us to do that. But I would also like to agree with Nell. Considering there are loads of us who come from abroad, it's very nice getting their perspectives. So if you already know what you want to do in your future career, what you want to do for your thesis, and you know that some things are not, maybe you need to expand on some studies, then it's good to start right away. Start talking with your academic supervisor, start talking with your professors, because then you have enough time to do all of it.
Absolutely. That's some really great advice for sure. Now, maybe we can talk just briefly a bit about the actual facilities. Now that we are able to be back on campus studying after a few years on Zoom, what is it like actually being in mostly Lux and Seoul, which are right in the heart of campus, the libraries and things like that? Maybe this I'll open up to whoever would like to share a little bit what it's actually like being on campus. Anyone?
Okay, I go. It's first of all, it's amazing to be back actually, because being isolated like that is not fun for anyone. But I remember the first week back on campus was actually my field work in Upåkra. And so, I mean, just coming there is so high levels of energy and like, oh my God, I'm meeting new people. It's going to be so much fun. And then just continue on that. It's really just the best feeling ever. It feels like being alive again. As for the actual locales, I'd say, Lux is it's my home now. I've been there, studied my entire like archaeology career there, my entire bachelor's and now my master's. So it's like that's actually my home really. So and there's something for everyone. It's half of it is like the old preserved building, which I love the smell of old buildings. And then we have the newer, like more modern area. So it's pretty nice. And we have very close to the university library as well. The most beautiful, one of the most beautiful buildings in Lund. So it's perfect. I love it. Right in the center.
Absolutely. And something I think a lot of students don't know before they come to Lund is we do actually have 26 libraries. So of course we have a library in Lux and in Seoul that are focused on having books for the humanities and languages, but you can actually visit and study in any of the libraries across campus. So I know some students tend to find a favorite and stick there. So I don't know if anyone has a favorite study spot around campus that you tend to drift to, or does everyone stick quite close to Lux and Seoul?
I can talk about that. The LTH, what is that in English? The like technical university part. Yeah, the engineering faculty. Thank you. Yeah, they have like a really nice, just like study place called the Studiecentrum, like the Center for Study or whatever. And there's no library or anything. It's just study places, but it's really, really cozy. So I usually like to sneak in there, and it's very nice. Otherwise, in general, there's a lot of very like small and hidden away places, study places all over the entire city, which is very nice because I mean basically every building in the entire city is owned by Lund University, right? So you can walk in pretty much anywhere and you can find some small place where you can sit and study. And I think that's very nice and very cozy because you will most likely end up finding your own favorite spot, and that's very nice. Other than that, I know that the language and linguistics, we had a meeting like 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about the Lab, the Humanities Lab, and unfortunately it was all like neurolinguistics that I don't care about, so I didn't pay any attention at the meeting. But basically they seem to have everything that you could need, right? Those like hats you put on, they monitor your head, monitor your brain waves, and they have some like quiet room where you can do perfect recordings of everything, and singing, and I don't know, again, like I just read books, so I didn't pay too much attention. But if you look up Lab or Humanities Lab, you should find a lot of it at Lund University. And I also think that we have really good libraries. I think that there's a really large selection of a lot of things, even within Chinese. There's a lot of good stuff within Chinese, but there's a lot of we have a lot of libraries with a lot of good books, a lot of old books, and yeah, it's great. It's great.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. I put in the chat there for everyone if you'd like to read more about the Humanities Lab, the link to the website there, because it is quite a cool thing that I think a lot of times when you think about coming to study humanities, you don't necessarily think about lab work being an option for you, but it really is in a lot of cases. I know I volunteered for one of those hat brainwave studies when I was a student. It was, I think, a project with a psychology student, a like neuroscience student, and a linguist, where I had to look at pictures of different things and different words, and then they studied my brainwaves and then kind of like emotional reactions tied to that when I look at different words, which was really interesting. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do there, especially within linguistics for sure. Awesome, great. Wow, I had a next question, but that completely made me forget it. So perhaps one thing that we can talk about that is a bit outside of studies, but still related, I think, is that a lot of students come to Sweden and imagine that you must speak Swedish in order to live and learn in Sweden. So perhaps that's something I can ask our international students here about. What has the experience been for you in terms of, do you feel you need Swedish in your everyday life, or are you learning Swedish on the side for any reason? Kind of how's that experience been? Maybe Miriam, we can start with you.
Yes, I was so surprised because everyone speaks perfect English and I've not met a person who doesn't know English and I can't have communication. So you don't need to know Swedish language to adapt here, but of course it's better if you know, and if you start, you can join the SFI course and learn some basic Swedish if you want to, but it's not mandatory and you can live with English, it's easy. So yeah, about the SFI, firstly, I think that it's the first thing international students need to do, because even though that it's English, everyone speaks English in the shops and in other places, writing's mostly in Swedish, so it's good to know some basics.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And SFI, for those who aren't aware, SFI is Swedish for immigrants. So it's a free Swedish class that's offered by the Swedish government in order to help you learn. So that's definitely a great resource there. Absolutely. And normally when I ask this question, we don't always have two Swedes in the panel who you can clearly point to how well Swedes speak English. So that's a little bit of a spoiler for the answer to this question. But Lee, Mia, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, sure. I do think also that if you are coming, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. You do not really need Swedish to get by here. You will end up passively learning at least how to read a decent amount of everyday Swedish, and SFI can help expedite that. But also, I do think that if you're moving here from any international place and you're considering possibly wanting to stay here afterward, then obviously it's a very good idea to try to learn Swedish as much as you can right away. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great points there. I guess also maybe Mia, I'll address this to you also as an international student. What was there anything that was kind of the biggest culture shock that you had when you came to Sweden, or the biggest difference from studying in your home country, perhaps?
Well, definitely a difference, because I didn't study in my home country since 2016, so not much of a culture shock. But one thing I noticed, it was shocking when I came and all the shops were either opening late or closing very early, especially on the weekends. So that's one thing that you notice right away. Otherwise, it's a very nice place to get used to.
Great, absolutely. Miriam, Lee, any culture shocks you had that you'd like to share?
I find out that it's possible to live without sun, and as a Georgian, it was really hard because we have a lot of sun in my country, and yeah, everyone suggests like that we have to start drinking vitamin D, but yeah, and today we had the sun like really 20 minutes. I think that it was so rare, and I was so surprised. Wow, the sun. And so I think that you should know that it's so really cold here in the winter, and you might need a bit warmer clothes than you need in your own countries.
A very good point, as we all sit here in the dark now at 4:45 p.m. But one thing I do wish is that we did these webinars now and then again in spring, because I do think it pays off so much when you get the long days at the other time of the year, but it's definitely tough at this time of the year. Perhaps maybe I can ask Nell and Andreas, as people who've lived here your whole life, do you have any tips for students who might be worried about coming to live in a darker, colder place than perhaps many have come from?
I think it's really nice. I mean, I've lived south of my longitude, whatever it's called. I've lived in the States, and I've also lived in China and Japan. And I feel like it's not really very fun when the days are always equally long. And when like the Americans are like, oh my gosh, the sun is going down at 6 p.m. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I think it's much nicer, especially as you say, like, I mean, the spring and summer is unbeatable, right? When the days are really long and it's really nice. Yeah, I mean, it's much more fun when there's some form of variance to the whole weather situation. So I just think it's a bonus personally.
Yeah, well, that's a unique take, but a very nice one. No, any advice that you would share?
Yeah, I halfway agree. I do think it has its charm. We get to experience all the 4 seasons, and we can see, like, I love also the spring and summer, because you have this amazing surge of energy because everything comes alive, including yourself. But also during autumn and winter, it's quite the opposite. So yeah, vitamins and fruits and vegetables, yeah, definitely load up on that, because the sun is absent for such a long time.
Absolutely. And one tip we always like to share from our office is that if you're coming from a country that's not typically cold, don't buy a bunch of winter gear in that country and bring it, because it's probably A, heavy and going to weigh down your suitcase, and B, probably not very good for actual cold weather. So you should wait. And there's a lot of secondhand shops and places where you can buy winter gear here in Lund or in nearby Malmö or other places for not too expensive. And then you'll save yourself a lot of weight in your suitcase, is one of my big tips there as well. But speaking of tips, perhaps if we could go around, maybe everyone could share your main tip for someone who's considering studying your program or coming to Lund in general. What would you share as something they should be thinking about before they come? Maybe Lee, we'll start with you.
That's a good question. I think I kind of talked about this before, but like, get used to having conversations with yourself about what you're doing, what you want, and how you want to make your own next move, because you're going to be in a situation where you have tons and tons and tons of opportunities, and you're also totally master of your own fate. It's a program where you could probably just kind of passively go by it if you want and technically complete the degree and not really get that much out of it. Obviously, I would not recommend doing that, but you're going to need to be proactive. Everybody here is incredibly friendly. They're also not here to hold your hand. And so, you know, if you're curious about something, go talk to professors, email people, initiate conversations. Yeah, so it's almost don't even think of it as school. I'm not sure how helpful it would be to think of it as school. Think of it more as sort of a journey that you're going on yourself that's going to be facilitated by a lot of really interesting people.
Absolutely. Very wise advice there. Thank you. Mia, what would be your biggest advice for students to consider before coming?
I definitely agree with what Lee just said. Seek out opportunities. Do come in with if you don't know what you would like to do, definitely form it in the first semester, because we're already at the end. So it's first quarter is already done. So you have to start thinking about that, but also come open-minded, because you will meet new people. You will meet people from all over the world, different backgrounds. You will have an opportunity to experience stuff that you probably haven't been able to experience in your own country or wherever you're coming from studying. So come prepared. You can have fun. You can be great in school, have loads of friends, and to learn new things, and have loads of opportunities to do that. So basically, come prepared. That's my.
Also some wonderful advice. Thank you. Andreas?
Yeah, I think that both of the prior speakers have been very, very good. I could really just repeat what they said. I think I will add, obviously take this with a grain of salt. Don't take this too literally, but I think you have to believe in yourself, right? You have to be a little bit like, it's going to get tough. I mean, like, no matter where in the entire world you do your master thesis, it's going to be tough at some point, right? So you have to learn how to believe in yourself. And I think, like, especially because we do have so much freedom, it is expected that, like, obviously you can get help from people, but you are also expected to get a little bit angry when things don't work and just push through. Because if you fall down and collapse, if you collapse and fall down, you're probably not going to make it anywhere, right? So you have to believe in yourself, and you have to have the ability to get angry and push through when needed, as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Very, very wise advice all around here that everyone's been giving. Miriam.
Yes, that was really good suggestions. And I just want to add that the process of adaptation is not easy, and just give yourself some time, and slowly and gradually everything will be better. And it's important that at the beginning, there's a lot of new things that you might feel that you are lost. But as I said, like, it takes some time, and gradually, if you don't give up, like, you will find like your place and how to move forward.
Great, thank you. And Nell.
Yeah, like all great points already been made. But for my specific program, maybe I should say that start thinking. I mean, if you're already thinking about becoming an archaeologist, then you're, I guess, already in the right area. But try to figure out what exactly you want to write about in your thesis, and what area you want to focus on with your studies. Because, I mean, since we are in the southern Scandinavia area, that's the region where we'll focus on when we do all our studies and what the research actually. But also, if you might be more interested in digital archaeology, we're on the very forefront, I'd say, Lund University with that. So if that's something you're interested in, just come here. We have many people coming here for that specific reason, actually, not just for the courses, but for the professors who have those courses. So that's awesome. But try to think if this is a place that can actually help you along your specific intended subject area to study.
Yeah, great. Well, we're winding down here. We only have a few minutes left. So if anyone in the audience has a question for us, please feel free to share. But it seems like so far everyone's been quite content to listen in on the conversation we're having, which is great. One thing I think I would like very quickly to touch on, we haven't had a lot of time to talk about it, but is kind of the area that we live in here and things to do outside of class. So what do you typically do with your evenings and your weekend times? Do people travel around, or, go out? What's your typical kind of outside of class time look like? Maybe we don't have time for everyone, but if anyone wants to particularly share kind of some of the things that you can get up to in the area.
I'd say the best thing you can do is like to join Nation, first thing to do, because they give you like bar nights or karaoke nights and this kind of things. And if you don't have any plans, you can always go and join the Nations and have some fun with them. Also, when you're a student, it's the best decision because they are not too expensive, and you have a chance to meet a lot of other students that from the different faculties, and that's a way to make some friends.
Absolutely. Some great points there. And actually, we have a question that's just popped up in the Q&A about what accommodation is like in Lund. So that also could be quite a complicated question to get into with 5 minutes left. But perhaps I'll give a very short overview that if you are a non-EU citizen coming to Lund, you do have a housing guarantee through LU accommodation, which means that you have all different kinds of accommodation essentially that you can apply for, and you're guaranteed to get one of them at least. If you're an EU citizen, you are responsible for finding housing on your own, but there are different kind of housing associations and private housing and things. So maybe the best way to answer this question would be actually to have our EU citizens chime in a little bit about if you have any tips about finding your housing, or what kind of housing you eventually stayed in. I've also posted a link in the chat to housing where you can read a bit more about this, Hade. But maybe a quick answer from anyone who found their own housing.
Can I do it?
Of course.
So my main advice is start early. You might not find housing for autumn straight away because it's still the spring semester, but start early, start researching, and do try to, this is good for your budget, do try to get housing in Lund. Then you don't have transportation costs. So you're in Lund, you're in the you're where you need to be basically, and then you can use the budget on anything else. So that's my advice. But you have loads of web pages on the university pages. You can find them. Bopolen is where I found mine, and it's pretty cheap. It's really good. So you can find it, and do persist, because if you write like 10 emails, you'll get a reply to maybe 5 to 7 of them. So do be persistent in your search.
Absolutely. And I would say that's the biggest advice our office gives as well, is of course, as soon as you're admitted, start looking. And it usually works out as long as you're persistent and start looking early. And we always recommend accept the first offer you find, essentially, and then you can always switch once you're here. It's much easier to find something new once you're here, but you just want to make sure you have something to start, essentially. So great. And again, you can check out the link there that I've posted. So in our last minute or two here, I'd love to do kind of a quick fire wrap up round of if there's anything that you haven't gotten a chance to mention that you think you'd really like to mention about your program, but otherwise kind of why should a prospective student choose your program, in terms of if you're this kind of student, this program is going to be a great fit for you if this is what you're looking for. So we'll do a quick wrap up round. Maybe we'll start with Lee.
Yeah, I'd say I kind of basically just agree with what you said before, Audrey. If you either really know something that you want to do and you want to have the freedom to do it yourself while also, you know, getting a bunch of new tools, or the exact opposite. If you're going in kind of like, all I want to know is that I want to be in kind of an academic headspace again, thinking about theory of humanities and social sciences, thinking about potential applications of it, but I want to be exposed to a wide range of possibilities. I think in both of those situations, the MacA program is a really great fit. Great,
wonderful. Mia?
Well, the visual culture will definitely give you both as well. It will further your career if you want to go into the PhD and further studies, or if you want to go straight into work. It will be very good for your resume. And of course, you get the knowledge, you get the experience of your peers, of your professors. So it's a very, very good program to do. Great. And it's fun.
That's always important too. Nell?
Yes, I agree with everything else that's been said already, because this is so much fun. Archaeology is the best thing ever. And we really do have a lot to offer, like I said before, like with the digital archaeology, that like we are the very forefront, at least some of the bigger universities are teaching that. And also we kind of focus mostly on like southern Scandinavia, that area. So if that's something you're interested in, for instance, the Viking Age, that's much more than just the Viking Age, but you know what I mean. Come here, we have lots of fun all the time. So it's the best.
Oh, wonderful. Miriam?
So generally, human rights are really huge field, and human rights studies helps you to study the field from very different points of view, and also makes you to question everything. And there's no like right answers and wrong answers, and it helps you to find your own ways how to change the situation and what kind of way you want to choose and how you want to improve human rights. So I think that's a great way.
Great. And last but not least, Andreas.
All I can say, I can agree with what everyone said previously, of course. And yeah, come here if you want to change the world, because I think that it really gives you the freedom and the support to really pursue something that you want to become really, really good at. Yeah.
Wow, what a fantastic way to end. Wonderful. Well, before I let everyone go, I want to call your attention, the audience, to just a couple links that I've put here in the chat where you can kind of find some future resources if you'd like. So of course, the application is open now for autumn 2023 studies for all of the programs here, with actually maybe the exception of visual culture. I think it opens every other year and will open again a year from now, but you can kind of get a head start for everyone else. And the application will close January 16th. So you can find the application steps there. If you'd like to chat with some of our current students, we have around 80 current students online that you can talk with at any time. Most of our humanities programs are represented there, but you could also find a student from a different country that you're from. If you'd like to ask what it's like to study at Lund coming from that place, you can chat with students online there and also read our student blogs. Next is, of course, the link to the program pages, the humanities subject area. We also, of course, have the next week and a half still continuing our applicant weeks program here. So, of course, today probably was the big day for those of you interested in humanities, but we will have another day next Thursday that's focused also only on student life experiences. So we have webinars about student life and getting involved in nations and activities, a webinar about getting involved in research and internships and study abroad, as well as a session with a Q&A with alumni. So you can come back and join us then if you want to hear a little bit more about that experience. And of course, on Friday will be a final how to apply webinar where you can get all of the questions answered in terms of the actual details of the application. And then finally, that last link there, contact us, is where you can get in touch with my team. So if you have any questions about the application, scholarships, anything like that, you can always reach out to us there and we'd be happy to help you out. But otherwise, I want to say a big thank you to our panelists today. It's been really wonderful having this great conversation with you all and learning so much about the different programs and hearing from your experiences. Also, a big thank you to our audience who has hung around and hopefully had an enjoyable time listening to us, and also a hello to our future audience who might be viewing this recording. But otherwise, I wish you all a great rest of your day, and thank you so much again.